Hey guys, this is Max, and today we want to review the Contax RTS. But before we dive into the review, I want to tell you the story of how I got this particular camera. And it starts a couple of weeks ago when I visited my aunt's place in Swabia, and I brought along my Leica M6 because I wanted to visit my grandmother as well, who is almost 90 years old by now and living in a retirement home, and I wanted to use the opportunity to take some of her portraits. And of course, bringing along the Leica M6 sparked a conversation about analog photography with my aunt at some point, and she mentioned that she worked at Carl Zeiss for 28 years, mostly in Oberkochen, and that back in the mid-1970s when she started, she actually bought a Contax with 3 different Carl Zeiss lenses. And she told me all about how she enjoyed photography back then, and especially the macro lens that she got. And of course I got increasingly interested, and I carefully asked her about the whereabouts of this camera. And she was like, well, actually I think I gave it to your sister at some point. So I instantly texted my sister, who is living in southern Denmark, and she was like, yeah, I do remember that camera, and I think it's somewhere in our attic. So, to make a long story short, not even a week later, I was holding this Contax RTS together with 3 beautiful lenses in my hand, realized that it's in a really great condition and working smoothly, and I could instantly start taking some photographs. Was instantly developing the first test roll and testing it extensively in the last couple of weeks. And now it's about time to do a proper review. So today, this is what we're going to do. Jules and I will take a couple of photographs with this particular camera using all the 3 lenses that came with it. That's a 50mm f1.4 planar lens, this 60mm f2.8 macro lens, which is amazing, and a 200mm f3.5 portrait lens. So let's take a closer look at this camera. Contax is a Carl Zeiss brand that the company used between 1932 and 2005. And before getting into the entire Contax history, which is really interesting, I just want to focus on the 1970s here. And back in 1972, around that time, Carl Zeiss was looking for a new camera manufacturer. So basically a company that would create an SLR body that would go along well with their high quality Carl Zeiss lenses. And at first there were talks with the company Contax, but eventually they decided to work with Yashica. The first result of the cooperation between Carl Zeiss and Yashica was this Contax RTS, with RTS standing for real-time system, which of course meant that it was metering in real time. Basically, once you press the shutter, it selected the right shutter speed and ensured that your exposure was right. And the camera was first introduced at Photokina in 1974 and was an immediate hit when it hit the market in 1975. And that's also the year when my aunt purchased this camera. What is interesting is that it was directed at the professional level market. And here I really have to mention that in combination with the professional motor drive, this camera was able to, or still is able to, shoot 5 frames per second. And that is really interesting because when you look at the prices on eBay today, this camera can be had for, on average, around 130 euros right now. Of course, the prices are bound to change. And what you get is a really solid and wonderfully designed camera that was directed at the professional market back then. So in comparison to other SLRs that you can get, this is really a great bargain, and I encourage you to take a look at it, especially because you do get access to Carl Zeiss lenses. So now let's take a closer look at the technical details of the Contax RTS. What is most important is that it has an electronically controlled horizontal cloth focal plane shutter with speeds ranging from 1 second to 1/2000th of a second, so really fast. And in addition to that, you have a bulb mode. Besides that, there is a dedicated ISO dial ranging from ISO 12 to 3200. And there is exposure compensation of +2 and -2, depending on what you want to do. In addition to the shutter speed and the ISO dial, we have a couple of different buttons. We have a mirror lockup. We do have a depth of field preview down here and a self-timer. And most importantly, we have a metering button here on the front that you will use a lot if you're in manual mode, the manual exposure mode. So what you would usually do is take a look through the viewfinder, press that button here on the front with your index finger, and then get an indication of the suggested shutter speed, and then you can reset it up here. What is interesting, what someone also mentioned to me already in one of the forums, is that you set your shutter speed here on the left with the dial on the left, and not what is more common by now here on the right, where the Contax RTS has its ISO dial. What I should also mention is the viewfinder, which is really bright and wonderful and covers 92% of what is actually ending up on the film, and has a very nice indication of the shutter speed here on the right side and the important information that you need. And what is also interesting, when you use the camera in the aperture priority automatic exposure mode that you can set here, where you just set it to A, you still have the shutter speeds briefly lighting up when you press the shutter. So you also get some degree of control, or at least the information that you need about your shutter speed in the automatic control setting. Yeah, so these are the typical features that you would expect from such an advanced professional segment SLR camera. So what are our findings after using the Contax RTS for the last couple of weeks? Most importantly, this camera really feels like a professional SLR. Even today, after 40 years, the electronics run smoothly, the high quality material comes through. It's such a joy to press this shutter. The shutter sound is simply amazing, and what I particularly like is that the shutter itself almost feels like a soft release. The shutter release is so soft that you instantly get some feedback and it sounds wonderful. What I also really appreciated is the separation between the shutter and the metering button here at the front. So especially in manual mode, kind of much more consciously thinking about, okay, pressing metering first, then doing your settings, maybe overexposing a little bit if you need to, and then actually pressing the shutter and have that completely separated. What I also liked is the amazingly bright viewfinder and how easy it is to frame and focus using it. So even with the 50mm f1.4 planar lens, I found myself really hitting focus when shooting portraits with this camera, and also found myself using it quite a bit for portrait sessions because I enjoy it so much. And it also creates a certain atmosphere because of the shutter sound, because of the speed that brings along as a manual film advanced camera. I really enjoyed it. Last but not least, what is also important, I think, is that it is well suited for starters, for beginners. So if you're just starting out and looking for a solid, maybe even professional segment SLR analog camera, you should definitely take a look at this camera, because it can be had, as mentioned before, for only around €130 on eBay. Of course, prices are bound to change. And this body does instantly give you access to Carl Zeiss lenses. And this, last but not least, is of course what I enjoyed the most, getting this camera from my aunt and then a set of lenses. These lenses are amazing, and what they bring out on 35mm cameras and 35mm film is really astounding. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Contax RTS. If you did, remember to like this video and maybe even share it with your friends. And if you want to see more videos like that, please leave us a comment in the comment section below and subscribe to our little channel. As you know, Jules and I really appreciate it. So thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon. Bye.